Hello, everyone. Parul Srivastava here from the 1947 Partition Archive. Welcome to the third season of Sunday Stories Live, brought to you by the 1947 Partition Archive, a global non-profit, non-governmental organization that works tirelessly to preserve the nearly lost oral histories of partition. I'm excited to be hosting this season. As I said, this is the third season of Sunday Stories. The first season was hosted by Noor Anand Chawla. The second one was hosted by Sonam Kalra, and I'll be your MC for the event tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this episode where we will be conversing with the well known author Amardeep Singh. His work focuses on the Sikh legacy in Pakistan and on the travels of Guru Nanak. As the name suggests, this event series will be taking place every Sunday, so be sure to join us. If you wish to watch any episodes from the last two seasons, they are available on our Facebook and YouTube page under the video section. Sunday Stories is a series that will bring to you academics, scholars, oral historians, journalists, and people's personal stories of partition. This season's theme is understanding partition through memory studies, which is an academic field studying the use of memory as a tool for remembering the past. So let me begin by telling you a bit about myself. I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of History in the University of Hyderabad in India. Currently, I'm a Fulbright Nehru doctoral researcher from India, visiting the Department of History at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. I've been involved with the 1947 Partition Archive since 2018. I'm a former story scholar with the archive, and I've contributed by interviewing more than 60 people in Hyderabad and Lucknow. I have assisted the archive in several other projects, including the Tata Trust Partition Archive Research Grant Project. I've also acted as a convener for the archive's Responsible Accessibility and Ethical Use of Conflict Zone Oral Histories project in 2019. So today, it is my absolute honor to continue the Sunday Stories tradition and facilitate this amazing conversation with Amardeep Singh. Let me start by telling you a little bit about him. Amardeep Singh was educated at the Doon School in India. Later on, he studied electronics engineering at the Manipal Institute of Technology, and he has a master's in business administration at the University of Chicago, USA. He now lives in Singapore, having worked in the financial sector for 25 years, where he led American Express Asia Pacific region as the head of revenue management. He dedicated himself now to visual ethnographic research. He has authored two books, which are called Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, and The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. These are the two posters of his books on the screen. Other than that, he has made two documentaries called Peering Soul and Peering Warrior, which are readily available on YouTube, so you can go and check them out. Since the end of 2018, he, along with his wife and his team, they've been engaged in the making of a multi-episode docuseries called Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels. This has been very well researched and filmed across 9 nations and is scheduled to be released in October 2021. So we will now have a look at the trailer, which is being shown for the very first time on our platform.
Guru Nanak, an embodiment of oneness, is a guiding force for many. Born in the 15th century, Guru Nanak glided across distant lands for over 2 decades on an altruistic pursuit. To relate with people of diverse cultures and belief systems, he engaged in philosophical and social dialogue. Through the medium of words and music, he gracefully imparted experiential insights, fearlessly challenged the binary constructs of society, and relentlessly opposed gender, religious, racial, and class inequalities. Today, in the 21st century, geopolitical restrictions and cultural mandates impose immense challenges to trace Guru Nanak's extensive travels.
My name is Amardeep Singh. I retrace the life events of Guru Nanak as narrated in the earliest historical texts.
We navigate through Punjab, the land of 5 rivers, and travel to the Sundarbans Delta, sail across the ocean to the Sangla Deep Island, scale the Himalayas to reach the region of Meru Mountain, and trudge the dunes to cross the deserts of Hejaz. Guided by Guru Nanak, who saw no stranger, our team remains internally borderless while navigating through physical borders.
गुरु नानक देव जी ने हम लोग परम पिता परमात्मा का नाम बताया। उनका नाम एक ओम, सारा संसार असत्य है, परमात्मा सिर्फ एक सत्य।
He had his own message of oneness of humanity, and that cut across all regions, all caste barriers, all religions.
دا بابناکو چې په کوبل په پېښور ګرځېدو دا ارمندو کې لوړو څوک په یوازې دي څوک په بار
कोई सी बात तो बोले कि आप में और मेरे में क्या अंतर है
530 years ago coming, on uncharted lands. He didn't know the language, but still making such a big impact, an impact which not only had permanence, which was carried on.
ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਨਸਾਨੀਅਤ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਹੈ ਇਨਸਾਨੀਅਤ ਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਪਿਆਰ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਬਾਬਾ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ
Narratives associated with Guru Nanak's voyages are embedded with philosophical expositions that aid the mind's alchemy. Akin to the unraveling of an allegory, anecdotes from his travels evoke insights that facilitate navigation through the mist of life. Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, a 24-episode docuseries. Join me in this humble attempt to understand Guru Nanak, an embodiment of oneness.
So that was an amazing documentary. I mean, the trailer was really fascinating. Welcome, Amardeep.
Thank you, Parul. Thank you to the 1947 Partition Archives team for giving this opportunity. Really appreciate that.
Thanks a lot for coming to us, like on a Sunday evening. So before we sort of start talking about the documentary, I was wondering if you could tell us something about your body of work before the docuseries.
Right. So my body of work, as you introduced me, I mean, it's really what I'm associated with now for the last 7 years. It's basically in the realm of visual ethnographic research, something that I've been, delving into various strands of cultures, history, spirituality, music, various elements for all through my corporate life. In fact, from my college days, 30 years. And then in 2014, I embarked on this path to document the, it was a chance visit to Pakistan, which then I felt that, what's my contribution to the society? I mean, one of the principles of Guru Nanak's faith is to earn and to share. It's very important to share. But to be very honest, I felt that being in the corporate world, I had not shared enough. So I took this diversion from my corporate world in 2014, feeling that what I had seen in Pakistan as the remnants of my Sikh legacy, of our broader communities in the Indus region, post-partition, which was lost, I had an opportunity in 2014 to walk across 36 cities and villages, and right from Kashmir up till Multan, and from Afghanistan border right up to Lahore. And I felt, why was I shown this? Why did the energies open these gates for me? Those times it was still very tough to actually get in and beyond these few functional gurdwaras. And when I came back, I felt that it must be documented. And that's my contribution in terms of an opportunity cost, in terms of a documentation for the future. The wealth that I'm contributing is in the form of narratives. I did that, and thereafter that book took me to a certain pedestal from where the doors opened once again. And I did the second book, which was The Quest Continues, which allowed me to document about 90 additional cities and villages. But this was now not limited to the northern parts of Pakistan, though we did include Baltistan, Kashmir, Sindh, Balochistan, as well as Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab. So that body of work took me across to 90 cities and villages. Having done that, I did these two documentaries, and that then diversified me to this bigger question. The life's purpose seems to be the project which we are now about to deliver on 14th October, the trailer of which you've just seen. It's kept us busy for 3.5 years. This becomes much bigger than a project done in one country. We don't know how really these things happen, but just faith and a vision and 3.5 years in a tunnel, and we're just seeing the light coming out. And this is the body of work that we feel that is really our life's mission, is to document for posterity the oneness message of Guru Nanak through his entire journeys, documented as per the oldest text. That's what the body of works is. I don't like to associate myself with the corporate world anymore, where I spent 25 years of my life.
Okay. But I mean, it's a massive task that you undertook, and very successfully you've brought out this docuseries. And I think after seeing the trailer today, people will be excited to sort of know what happened during the course of your journey to 9 different countries. So okay, so you mentioned your experience in the corporate world for 25 years. So how did you move into the world of visual ethnography, photography, and videography?
So it's a long story, and I think in this short, brief time out here, I'll rather focus on what probably someone else who aspires, one of the listeners in this group, if they want to aspire at some stage of their life to make such transitions, it may not be the path that I followed, but if they want to make transitions, then what are the insights I can offer them? I think that in that way, you'll get the answer to the question as to what made me go through this transition. How did I do it? Look, first and foremost thing, in our life, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. And I will quote from Guru Nanak's verse itself, where he writes in the one of the verses in the Guru Granth Sahib is documented as his saying as Hum Admi Ha Ikdami. I exist as a human being because I've taken the last breath. That's it. There is not a guarantee that my next breath is going to come, right? And if that's the frame of mind, that every moment is a moment in existence given to you in the moment, then you really start aspiring to see what can I do the best right now. I don't have a crystal ball to even predict my next breath, right? So what am I going to talk in the corporate world? We used to do 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 1-year plans. I've led teams with that. And most often we would be off track, right? But the beauty of this world is, which I'm living for the last 7 years, is we make no plans. We just believe in something and we walk the path. And that's the difference. No plans, and yet the divine manifestations make all aspirations take shape and take into bodies of works, which is not what you are doing. It's some divine energy that's making you do it. So I think that's the difference. But really, what made that change, right? And if I was to put down the 4 skill sets for anyone who wants to park them in as life lessons for their own navigation, first and foremost thing I often say this is, don't follow your passion. Now I'm contradicting probably out here, right? Because most of the people will say follow your passion, and I will say don't follow it. Never follow your passion, because if you follow your passion, you'll fall flat in this world. This world is very mean, and it's very, very task driven, right? Don't follow your passion. But I'm not saying passion is not critical for your existence. I'm just saying don't follow your passion. And here's the answer: create your passion. And there's a huge difference, right? Following your passion is you're blindly doing something, not knowing what it is. Creating is you immerse your every breath into it, right? And when you start doing that, there's a huge difference. The passion becomes you. Otherwise, you're just following your passion. I mean, you might be passionate about photography. So what? But what will make you a photographer of any repute? When you basically start creating photography as your passion, That's the difference, right? So passion is still very, very important. I've lived 25 years in the corporate world, and I can tell you, I don't remember anything of my that life. But the last 7 years is what I associate myself with because it's a very passion driven life. But I didn't actually come to this point of deviation in my life. The 30 years when I was in corporate, I was passionately building my foundations that I think the divine, when it decided that I was ready, started opening the gates. But 30 years of different layers went inside it. Next skill set I'll say, which has been my principle all throughout my life for the when I was in the corporate world in my college, and is still my principle, is what I say is take baby steps. Don't leap, take baby steps. Master each step. Because what will happen is once you mastered that step, the energies around you, that is actually making you move in that direction, is actually watching you. What you are watching is also watching you. That energy is watching you in the sense, what are you doing? So if you pick up, let's say, gardening, if you like gardening, do gardening to your best ability of your ability. You master it in 3 to 4 years with a baby step of gardening as your goalpost. You will realize from gardening will emerge your next passion, which will be right behind you. You don't need to actually go far away. You just pick it up from behind you, and you'll find your next path will emerge because you would have immersed yourself so much into that baby step that probably you would have come to the point of boredom. And boredom is very important. When the passion becomes a boredom, that means the gates for the next passion is about to open. Now you have to look out for it. What is the signal for the next passion? And I can guarantee you, if you are bored with one passion and you've given your best, the next passion is right behind you. You just need to turn back and pick it up, and then starts the next journey. And so this layering keeps happening in life till one fine day it becomes the life's purpose. The third skill I'll say, I'm giving you 4 skills out here. The third skill I'll say is, as you're progressing, do whatever you have to do. If you're in the corporate world, be in the corporate world. But these are parallel tracks that are developing, and there are no shortcuts. They'll take you 20, 30 years to get to a point of an acceptance. There are no shortcuts in life. But when that happens, look for the acceptability signals. Acceptability signals are in whatever you're doing. If the people around you start accepting it, that this is something which is a wow, that means you are on the path, on the right path. Now the question is, should you stick on that path or should you hold on and develop something else? I can't answer this for you. This is your intuitive self which will answer that for yourself, but you keep developing it. Look for the acceptability signals, right? And then, for instance, I'll give you an example. When I picked up photography, in a very short span of time, my photography became very, very well recognized. I started writing for magazines like Asian Geographic. Some of my writings were there. Do I do photography now? I haven't picked up my camera since 2017. I only pick it up for a purpose, but I know when I'll pick it up and I'll shoot, it will be right. Because I'm not a photographer, because now I've moved on to filmmaking. I've done so many things, from musicology, from photography to writing. So these baby steps keep developing an anchor. In some ways, I may be a jack of all trades, master of none, but yet in consolidation, there is a composite work coming out. And the last thing that I'll give as a signal in your transition, how I transitioned is never, never, never chase recognition. Let recognition chase you. Because if you do the right work, give your heart and soul into it, recognition will find you if it is supposed to be. I think the problem in today's world is in the instant gratification, in the instant recognition that we are trying to do. These are paths which I can tell you, each book takes X amount of years. Each documentary takes X amount of years. Guru Nanak's documentary has taken us 3.5 years of work to churn it out. I have been quiet. I have not been doing it for recognition. If the work is right, it will open up a next door in my life. And if it has to lead to recognition, so be it. That's how you transition.
That's some amazing, advice, Amardeep, in terms of, like how one should have a passion that's also meaningful and, wait for returns and rewards and just not start looking out, for this kind of things immediately. Okay, so for those of you who are just joining, you're watching Sunday Stories live from the 1947 Partition Archive. This is season 3, and we have Amardeep Singh with us, and my name is Parul Srivastava. Okay, so Amardeep, since your research took you to countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan, and of course other countries as well, so could you just share something about this cross-border mobilization and how everything came into existence for you?
Well, it's interesting. Uh, often I think they do say that watch your thoughts. I'm not a perfect guy. I've had many negative thoughts, but negative thoughts manifest into realities, right? And so do positive thoughts manifest into realities. But it all starts with a thought, just a thought, nothing more. And each of my three bodies of work, which you've introduced me for, be the two books on the Sikh legacy in Pakistan, the two documentaries, or this massive work, started with a simple thought, a desire. Way back in 2014, when I left the corporate world, I desired to go and see my father's place. I did not go to write a book. I often call myself on the stages in literature festivals, I'm an accidental author. I do not call myself as an author. But when I was sitting, we're talking about this particular body of work, which is a massive 3.5 years of work, Guru Nanak's travels. I was sitting in my home, I remember in 2018, September, and this thought came in as to why should one not aspire to actually document Guru Nanak's journeys and leave it in a form factor that people have not been experiencing because they can't read the text, and we have boxed Guru Nanak because he was beyond the 28 million Sikhs. His message was resonating across the entire Indus belt. Why should it not be documented? That's a thought which came in, and that thought started manifesting. Suddenly, you start laying it down into a chart, and you suddenly realize 70% of the area is not accessible where he traveled. I mean, these are countries like though the people today in WhatsApp University and Facebook have not made Guru Nanak stop travel. He continues. He's like a juggernaut. You go to the Jagannath Mandir in Odisha. The word juggernaut comes from there. The juggernaut, the totem pole god, is unstoppable. And so is Guru Nanak unstoppable today because he continues to travel in the minds of the people, of those who are believing. But we are not getting into that aspect. We are trying to see rationally what's documented in the oldest text and what is it that he's trying to say to document for the future generations. When you start doing that, you suddenly realize 70% of the landmass is inaccessible today. Be it Pakistan. If you want to go to Pakistan, you want to go to the Gurdwaras like Nankana Sahib, Kartarpur Sahib, and Panja Sahib. So there are accesses available. But Guru Nanak is not about Gurdwaras. Gurdwaras are memorials opened in his life because of his life events, which the community has opened. But to understand Guru Nanak, you have to go into the multi-faith sites where he traveled, and that requires you to go across boundaries, whether it be in Iran, whether it be in Afghanistan, whether it be in Makkah, Medina, whereas a Sikh I cannot go, whether it be in Iraq or Tibet in China, or it's Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka. That's the landmass we're talking about. Of course, this is very complicated because you're not going as a tourist. Try getting into even an easy tourist country like Sri Lanka. Very easy. You could go in with a camera and as a tourist. But try standing at that point where Guru Nanak in his one of his verse writes a very inspirational verse about connecting the good and the evil, the bridge between, and he takes the example of the Ram Setu bridge, which connects the negativities with the positivities as an example from the story of the Indian mythical story of the Ramayana, wherein how that physical bridge was crossed. And he is beautifully writing about that in his own verses to tell our mind. Try standing at that point where the LTTE problem just has got over a few years back, and try to fly a drone from there. How are you going to do it? Try doing that in Afghanistan. Try getting into a place behind Kargil, which is where the India and Pakistan have fought battles, right? And try and film the flow of the Indus River from there when Guru Nanak is coming from Tibet and he's coming from that direction into Pakistan and getting into Hassan Abdal. How would you do that? How would you get into Balochistan and go to the Hinglaj Mandir and stand there? How would you go into all these places? So it becomes a big challenge.
Sure, yeah.
Your question was, how did you mobilize it? I can tell you, I'm just a medium of delivery. There is no planning here. There are only people who connect. We needed a team every one of us had to be passionate. Whether a cameraman, who one of the main cameramen was from Pakistan, Salman Alam, the other two were Pramod and Deepak from India. Very passionate people, not being driven because of money. Money, of course, everyone needs to run their bread and butter, but it's that differentiation is the passion. How did we connect to them? That's a different story. Divine connects you to them. You have to manage them, right? How you do a editing of 50 terabytes of data over a period of 1.5 years. We've been actually stuck in this Corona environment in our homes, just managing the 50 terabytes of data, because Guru Nanak's documentaries cannot be done today in the way he traveled. You have to get inside this bordered world into one country, map it from north to south, east to west, get the data, and later on, you as a viewer have to see how did he sequentially travel. This is not about our story. This is about his story. Now, when you take that, the editing team has to be at a different level. How did we connect to that editing team? Commercially, there are many people there. My editing team is from the subcontinent, sitting in Singapore, brought in specially out here for this project because we figured out people in this part of the world will not even be able to understand the flow or the energy of this narrative, and you needed people from that side. But the beauty here is the average age of our team, apart from me and my wife, who are the oldest people inside this with gray hair, average age of our team is 28 years. That's the beauty. 28-year-old people at an average age trying to do a narrative of Guru Nanak. Let the work speak for itself. Navigating is very tough. Visas. How would you get a visa inside Pakistan to go beyond Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Patharpur Sahib? Trust is lacking. In spite of my having done so many books around this, I still struggle. How will you go into Afghanistan? And so forth. I mean, going to Mansarovar is one aspect in Tibet, but the narrative of Guru Nanak is not just Mansarovar. It gets us to the Himachal border and from the other side into Ladakh, where the two nations are actually nearly on the verge of wars. How do you get there to that point and be able to film it? There has to be a divine energy around it. Your direction, your thought has to be right, and rest is all a divine blessing. That's all I can say. There are stories and stories behind it, but it's quite a challenge, right?
Yeah. So I think a major part of, Punjab is now a part of Pakistan after the partition of India. So a lot of sites that are related to Guru Nanak, they've been abandoned, right? So could you talk about the condition of these sites now, or anything specific that you found in your travels related to these sites?
Well, you see, let's try and answer that question with a more holistic approach. Partition was not that only impacted Guru Nanak's followers. Guru Nanak was inside the grain of the entire Indus region, from Kashmir till Baltistan. Every Hindu or a turban-wearing Sikh was a believer of Guru Nanak. Even till date, a Balochi or a Sindhi who may have moved into India, they still are followers of Guru Nanak, right? That's a different thing, that the boundaries and the construction of and hardening of the religious boundaries have created a lot of divisions. When people lose their lands, they become internal focused, they try and protect their value systems, and they become hardened. This is a way the story evolves in every place. The thing that I want to caution before addressing Guru Nanak's aspect inside this, because you're talking from that perspective, is we need to start the understanding from partition was ruthless to all communities. Right? If you look at, before I answer from our lens, I would say, let's answer from East Punjab. How many of Islamic sites are remaining? Mm-hmm. Right? And then the answer lies on the other side too. When people leave, there is no hope for sites. Because people who have picked up their lock, stock and barrel and they've come inside here, of course, some of the sites the government has decided after many years to maintain, and there's an agenda inside that to maintain those sites, and those are shining and they are increasing by the day and they are becoming the anchoring sites. But the legacy of Guru Nanak was not limited to those 2 or 3 sites. There are umpteen number of sites, and those sites became homes of the people who moved from the other side. Mm-hmm. How can those places survive? And I'll give you one example. It's a very heart-touching example. You see my documentary on YouTube on my channel called Peering Soul, and for those who want to see it in Punjabi, it's called Trasdi Roo. And I'll tell you one example. I went to the Gurdwara, the remains of the Gurdwara in the village Daftu. Now, Daftu village had probably not seen a Sikh for many, many years. And I went, and I've never compromised my identity in any of the researches I've done for the last 7 years. I am what I am. Accept me for this, and I will do my research, right? So I've never compromised my identity. And when I go into the village, I get recognized, right? The entire village had surrounded around us. And we went inside the Gurdwara building. It's a massive Gurdwara. And an old man's family staying there, large family, and the old man comes in. He watches me, he allows me to film a few places inside, he guides me and all. And then, he comes to me and he says, I'll say it in Punjabi, he says, Sardar ji, bura na manna. Bura na manna, मैं अगर तुहानू एक गल दसा, असी पटियाले रहंदे सीगे. I'll translate this for the others. असी पटियाले रहंदे सीगे 47 ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ. ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਉੱਥੇ 2 ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ. ਤਕਸੀਮ ਹੋਈ, ਪਾਰਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਇਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਆ ਗਏ. ਅਸੀਂ 2 ਸਾਲ ਫਿਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ. 2 ਸਾਲ ਬਾਅਦ ਦਫਤੂ ਆਏ, ਇਹ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਖਾਲੀ ਸੀਗਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੜ ਗਏ. Right? So what he said was, we were staying in Patiala before 47, and when the partition, and I used to earn, we used to earn only 2 pieces of bread, and he was very young at that time. And when partition happened, they moved on this side. For 2 years, they kept moving from one village to the other, and then they finally came to Daftu, and they saw this huge Gurdwara, and they went inside and started staying. It was abandoned. And then this is what he says. This is the crux of the whole answer to the question. He says, "Maafi mangda ha. ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 2 ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ 47 ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਪਿਓ ਕਮਾਉਂਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ 2 ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਕਮਾਨੇ ਆ. Before 47, my father used to earn 2 pieces of bread. I'm still earning 2 pieces of bread. ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੰਨੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਇਮਾਰਤ ਨੂੰ ਠੀਕ ਠਾਕ ਰੱਖ ਸਕੇ. ਮਾਫੀ ਮੰਗਦੇ ਆ. I apologize that till date I don't have the money. We stay here that we could keep your Gurdwara properly, right? Now that answers it. That answers it. And my answer to him was, you know what? What you just said, it's touched my heart. I pray to divine, I pray to God that this roof should not fall, ever fall, and you should continue to live under this place. That's all I can say. So this is the physical aspect. Of course, there are many places which are being maintained. Many are abandoned. The beauty is the abandoned structures allow us to study and understand what our community was 7 decades before, which we are missing in the East Punjab. We have plastered everything. We've whitewashed everything. We've laden them with gold. It's a different world we are living in. It does not tell you the culture. It does not tell you the artistic elements. It does not tell you a reflection of what we were before. We were a very different community before. And it pains me. And then, why are we talking only about the bricks and mortars? What about the hearts of the people? We're talking about Guru Nanak. The entire belt of let's go to Swat, Mingora, those places up in the hills. Whether it be Bansri Lal, Santosh Kumar, you go to Balochistan, Quetta, such a large community of non-Muslims staying there. You go to Sindh, entire area is filled with people. And there's so many Gurdwaras. These are locality-based Gurdwaras. No one talks about them. These are the locality Gurdwaras where people are staying and managing the day-to-day worship. Gurdwaras, along with temples, are integrated fully in the Indus region. It's a syncretic place of worship. The narrative of Guru Nanak that we see from an East Punjab culture today in India is not what is the narrative that is there on the Indus belt of the people who stayed back. It's a very syncretic element. Now, why do we forget that in the question of the bricks and mortars? These are the remnants of the people's hearts, souls, cultures, practices that also tell us a big story of what we think we have gained in the name of freedom and what we have lost actually.
It's very fascinating, like you bring up these points. So I was just wondering if you can, sort of share any other anecdote from your travels, like while you were tracing the journey of Guru Nanak, something else, because I think our audience would be really interested to hear something.
So I think I've spoken a lot of hard-hitting stuff. So let's take a break and lighten our moods, if that's okay, right?
Yeah, sure.
So let me tell you a story in Afghanistan. I can tell you, this narrative that we have just put together, I'm not trying to pat our backs. The work has to speak for itself. I'm not trying to sell the work. The work is going to be available to the public. We are not putting any barriers. In the spirit of Guru Nanak, we've created a langar of narrative, and that langar has to be made freely available. People helped us finance that langar. We have a big vision ahead of us to make the Punjabi and Hindi series. We are making it freely available. People will decide. But yet, the stories that we have gone through have not been told in this narrative. Because this is not about us. This is not a docu-series about us, how we are doing a travel route. But I'll tell you, there are hidden stories inside this entire journey. Beautiful hidden stories. I'll tell you one of them, and if time permits, I can tell you another one. But the lighter note one is, we were in Ghazni. And today, I can't imagine this narrative can be done in Afghanistan. That's why I made a deviation that what we have done, it will remain for posterity. It was a time when we stepped in and we documented it. It won't repeat again, right? We were in Ghazni, and there are about 5 gurdwaras there, very well maintained gurdwaras. A small community, but the entire community. So there were 300,000 Sikhs and Hindus. I call them Nanak Panthis. The more you move from the East Punjab and keep going towards West, this division of Sikhs and Hindus doesn't exist. This is not, you can be who you are. You can be worshipping whatever you want to worship, but Nanak and all the Sikh gurus will be an integral part of your entire structure. All right. Now you get into the west, further west into Afghanistan, because this whole thing is Indus Belt, right? I'm talking about Gangetic Belt is very different from the Indus Belt, and you go into Afghanistan, where all the remnants are there, and in Afghanistan you find there are 5. So there should be 300,000 Sikhs and Hindus once. Now there were only, till this recent crisis has happened, the Taliban taking over. By that time, when we had been in 2019, there were about 1,200 people left. People means Sikhs and Hindus, right? All right, right now there are only about 180 odd left. But yet in Ghazni, there were about 15 families. Of the 15 families, 5 gurdwaras, and some of them are historical gurdwaras, like Nandlal Goya's Gurdwara, who was a poet with Guru Gobind Singh, and he used to write poetry in Persian, which is a very important text in our historical literature. And his site is also there in Ghazni. Beautifully maintained. But by whom? By those 15 families? No. By the money that the diasporas, people who have moved out over the years because of the problem in Afghanistan, are sending the money. Anyhow, the fun part of it. So we go to this Gurdwara, which is really on the outskirts, because I wanted to get the Ghazni through drone. And I dare not fly the drone within the city because it's going to be, we're going to be immediately caught. So we went to the furthest Gurdwara outside, Kotla Gurdwara. And from there, the Mahmud Ghazni's 2 towers, that the Mahmud Ghazni who came to the Indian subcontinent, in memory of him, there are 2 towers which are standing in the outskirts of Ghazni. Our drone can go about 1.5 kilometers. We flew our drone. Our drone went in, and Salman, who's our videographer, he's flying the drone, and I'm talking to the people around him, and he's gone over the city, and he's filming there. Suddenly he turns around, he says, "Amardeep Sahab, ye to AK-47 leke aa gaye niche se." And he's seeing it, the camera is pointing down, and these 2-3 guys are standing with AK-47s pointing at the AK-47, and the next we hear, they start firing. And I said, just get the drone back and let's get out of this place. So he gets the drone back. And I said, don't get it in one straight line. Go zigzag, because they should not know where we are. So he's going zigzag, but there's only one road. And the road is following the drone. By the time the drone came back to us, those guys, it was landing, and those guys were coming in their 2 vehicles towards us with about 8-10 men with AK-47s. And we were standing there. I said, that's it. We are dead today. This is the end of the project. Yeah. And the guy comes out, and we had the local person, Chebol Singh, with us, and he speaks Farsi. So Chebol Singh went to him, he said, just stay behind. And he started talking to them. And he must have explained to them who we are, what we are doing. And the ice broke suddenly. And this guy comes to us with a smile on his face. And he says, "Aapka kya khidmat kare? Banduk chahiye ki kartoos chahiye?"
Oh my God.
What shall I, how should I welcome you to this place? Instead of getting a tea and a biscuit, he says, shall I get you a banduk or a bullet? Tell me, what do you want to take from us? I said, let us go. So that's a fun part of it.
Oh, wow. Thanks a lot for sharing this. So I think, we can now move on to the audience questions because we have around 20 minutes left. Um, so everybody in the audience can type your questions in the comment boxes and we can choose, a few to ask Amardeep because we don't really have, like a lot of time here. Um, oh, great. So looks like we don't have, a lot of questions. So we can continue this conversation. Okay, so I was wondering something about oral histories. So, as far as your work is concerned, how valuable oral histories have been for you and how have they shaped your work, your journey, your book?
So it's like, you're like a detective, right?
Yeah,
You are like a detective who's trying to understand the past.
yeah.
There are two ways to understand the past. Either you study the narrative under which you have been conditioned to grow. I have been conditioned to grow in a particular narrative right from the times I went into a boarding school till the time I developed some bit of independence in my own thinking. It was all conditioned, right? Conditioning, don't get me wrong, is not wrong. Conditioning is important. It's like a stick that takes you forward. But the problem is that we get stuck to the stick.
Hmm.
At some point, you have to say, I've learned enough, but my mind poses many more questions, right? And I need to find answers for myself because history is just his story. Whose story am I telling you and whose story I want to hear, right? So the fact is, a narratives cannot be black and white. Someone has written it, someone's telling me his story, but there's always the other side of the story. And at some point, you got to say, let me leave my stick and let me try and actually investigate. Now, I am being fortunate that this is my own life's journeys have allowed me to get into certain areas where others would struggle. And I think I'm blessed in that angle that I think my life's purposes have been fulfilled. This has been a very meaningful life. It's not about dollars and cents anymore. I'm not a very rich guy, don't get me wrong. I'm not that I made millions in my corporate this thing, but I'm living my life, right? And as you get inside this, the question is that how is it that oral traditions and oral stories have shaped me? Okay, the question is, let me give you two examples. It's very hard. Oral narratives also, exploring them creates a lot of challenges. Okay. After I did my first book, I was in Pakistan. I did not give a narrative of breaking the communities. I have not shied from calling a spade a spade. That's been the principle in which I've worked. My books are not called Sikh Heritage. It's a very neutral title. It is to shake the system. I've called them Lost Heritage. Lost heritage is not a negative connotation. If someone understands it's lost, that means there's an opportunity. If you lose something, then you have an opportunity to actually revive it.
Yeah.
But not everyone understands the opportunity. So you can call it a very neutral territory and neutral name and skim the subject and do whatever you have to do and get the accolades. But the fact is you have to call a spade a spade. Now when I call a spade without trying to break bridges between people, I am very humane in my approach. Every chapter ends with a very humane approach. But history is history. I can't change it. I didn't do partition. I didn't kill 10, I didn't approve 10 million people. I didn't kill million of people. My own people died. My own families died. Members died. And we still are living with that baggage with us, the stories with us. Right? We are a composite of that. So I'm not responsible for what our forefathers did, but I'm responsible for what I'm trying to understand. With that in mind, when I go into Let's Take, and I've written a chapter in my first book, which is a fact because we've studied it. And I've called the chapter Rape of Rawalpindi. Okay? The fact is, I did not coin that word. Mountbatten coined that word, Rape of Rawalpindi, after the massacres that happened in and around Rawalpindi. Any student of partition will know what means, what Rape of Rawalpindi. It's not a word coined by Amardeep Singh. But yet, when I was doing the research for my second book, some quarters of the people out there from the establishment, the bureaucracy, didn't like it. And I faced the brunt. Why have I called this as Rape of Rawalpindi? And I'm trying to rationalize with them. This is a part of oral history, and I'm trying to connect few things with it, right? But the story that they have been brought up in is nothing to do with Rape of Rawalpindi. Rawalpindi is a very beautiful place. How can you call it as a Rape of Rawalpindi? So you understand how the story changes, and you have to meander through it. And therefore, the story takes me to the place where the entire the first attack on, so before partition, 1947, before that, till end of 1946, Punjab was a very secular place. It was the last place where the seed of divisions was seeded, if anyone knows partition.
Yeah.
And it had the Unionist Party. Unionist Party was being run by Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs together. And the parties trying to divide had taken over charge in different parts in the Gangetic Belt and Sindh and so on and so forth. Punjab remained very secular. And then Mr. Tiwana in end 1946 resigns, and thereafter the whole story starts. But March of 1947, the first attack in a predominantly Sikh village, there were a lot of Hindus also there, called Toa Khalsa. The name itself is Toa Khalsa village, right? Where an attack happens, and the women in total crowd, they jump inside the well. Now that's a part of documented history. How do you validate that? And what's the emotion associated with that well? I happened to get inside Kahuta. I went to that Toha Khalsa village. Now, getting inside Kahuta is a very, very challenging area for reasons. Those who know the Pakistan's geography and the sensitivities around with it, you can't get in. Those days, you could not have got inside as a foreigner. Somehow, I got inside. Now, I get inside, and I'm looking for that well. Where did this happen? And there's a segment in my documentary on Peering Soul. Those who are interested, go and see. And there's a Baba whom I stumbled upon. I'm trying to find out that place. And suddenly I see this old man walking on the road. And he's got these thick glasses. And I stopped by and I patted him. I said, Babaji, Sat Sri Akal, Salam. And he looks at me. He says, Tusi kis tarah aage? How did you come here? Right? And he was quite surprised. And I asked him, Babaji, jo asi padhe hai, ki thoye de andar Jananiya ne chhalang lai si. What we have read, the women jumped inside a well. And you know what? Thick glasses. And he had tears coming down. He says, Sardar Sahab, as tusi ki yaad dila data. What have you reminded me of today? He says, it was in 1947. I was a young boy. I was barely about 16, 17 years. But that incident happened in front of my eyes. Now, he's no more. He died 2 years back. But I was fortunate to get him. So what I'm trying to say is, you cannot get into oral narratives. Today, I find a lot of people are documenting oral narratives, right? Documenting oral narratives is very important. But the passion, the stories, the validations will only happen when there is a conditioned narrative that is there in front of you that guides you to the oral narrative, and then you've got to bring them together, match them, and put a narrative which becomes your own narrative for posterity.
Oh my God, that is something, that you actually encountered somebody who was alive at that time during that unfortunate incident. Okay, so we have a question from Shahzeb Danish. He asks, amazing insight. Was there some place where you couldn't go or didn't get a chance to go for this documentary? Yeah.
Is Shahzeb from Pakistan, and is this question Pakistan centric? Well, I've not been into Africa. I've not been into South Pole. I've not been to North Pole. What is the zone of this question, right? Is it Pakistan centric, or is it centric to the Guru Nanak's documentary? Let me answer it. I'm assuming this. He can write down the answer there, but I'll try and answer this. As far as the oldest documented texts are concerned, as I said, Guru Nanak today is a juggernaut in the minds of the people. People are sending him in the WhatsApp University. They're sending him every second day to a new places. I'm not concerned about that. I'm not even getting into that discussion, right? We are looking at only the text written up to about 180 years of his life. Guru Nanak's beauty is that he's only told you about how you should live your life. He's not written any autobiography. In fact, when he writes about Punjab state at the end of his third Odyssey, he says, Khurasan khasmana kiya. Khurasan is basically on the west of the river Indus. Khurasan khasmana kiya. Khasmana is a negative word. Destroyed it. Khurasan khasmana kiya. Hindustan daraya. He destroyed Khurasan, and then he came to Hindustan and he ravaged it. Whom is he talking about? Babur. He says not minced words. Guru Nanak has said this in his writing, but he's talking to God. And then he goes on to say, God, did you not even have the pain of what happened in Punjab at that time? He's asking him that question. What I'm trying to say is that he has written that such a profound thing of something that he has seen in his life, but he has not told you where did that happen. He has not said the place. The narrative tells us that there is a place in that memory in Ahmedabad. We don't know. Guru Nanak did not say that. Right? So now the men of faith, 65 years after his life, up till 180 years of his life, have written his story, history, his story, and laden it with some of his verses. And the beauty is that we are not trying to focus on just his story, because his story can be very dry. When you have to bring in the spiritual elements inside it, that's what you're trying to lead in. So that history, written up till 180 to 80 years, there are only two people traveling, Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana, his Muslim friend. Only two people. Later text actually also place a third person, who's Bhai Bala, as a Muslim, as a Hindu who's traveling. But the earliest texts only take him to 9 countries. In the 9 countries, all the sites that are the multi-faith sites, Islamic, Sufi, Hindu, Jain, Buddhist, the Nath Jogis, which is a wiped out culture now, was in abundance in Afghanistan and in India and in Pakistan. That culture, all the sites of that culture also, we have confidently, I can say, mapped every site in this series. Now, it's been mapped 550 years later, but it's been mapped. Now, if you're asking me Pakistan centric, if I've not been to any place, I would, if the person who asked the question seems he may have been from Pakistan, I would say, brother, tell me where you want me to take you and I'll take you. I've been to so many places in Pakistan, right? So,
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so we have another question from A. Chandra. What have you seen and experienced? Okay, so what have you seen and experienced that makes you feel like, never going back into the corporate world? Nanak always wanted us to be productive while being spiritual. So how do you reconcile? Yeah.
Mr. Chandra is probably believing I'm not productive right now. I'm highly productive. Just the definition of productivity is different. You know what? Okay. I am reminded of a work which Dr. Sahib Singh did in 10 volumes, large collection, the entire translation of Guru Granth Sahib in 10 volumes. Today we have boxed the scripture into a faith, but that scripture cuts across all communities. I can tell you, you read that, it's not that because I'm a Sikh I'm trying to say, but it's a true reflection of the Indic cultures. It's a true reflection of what a human being's aspirations should be, right? And if you look at understanding, it talks in the what we call as bhakti. It's the pinnacle of the bhakti movement, where Namdev, Kabir, all of them are residing. And that Baba Farid, all of them are residing there, right? And when you read it, it takes a lot of readings, right? I started reading it, I went to Dul school. They never taught me spirituality there, right? In fact, many years later, when in Hong Kong, I used to travel to work, and I would pick up one of the volumes of a translation done by Sahib Singh, 10-volume work, a huge repository of work, translating every verse. I can tell you, I used to go in the bus and I used to read it 1 volume at a time. It took me 2 years to read it fully, the 10 volumes. Okay, huge body of work. But I spent my most fruitful times in Hong Kong just reading and understanding that. That was one layer where I was very, very, very passionate. Now, what I'm trying to say is, Sahib Singh's work has not been valued by the community. In fact, he died a pauper. He died a pauper. His work was not printed by even the people of our own institutions. It's many, many years after his death that his work became well known. The tragedy of the creative space is, and this is the tragedy I don't understand of what the divine's plan is. I sometimes wonder, having lived a life in the corporate and having lived and now living this life, I've seen money. I used to travel business class. I now look for the cheapest economy class ticket. I'm not ashamed of myself. I'm absolutely fine. I came from nothing. I went up to the pinnacle of business class. I'm fine with an economy, cheapest economy, I would say, right? But the point out here, what I'm trying to say is, in that mix, what you realize is that the works that you're doing It's the measurement factor is not the dollars and cents that go into your bank. It's the narrative value that you leave for posterity, which you know very well. In your lifetime, people will not even understand it.
That is true.
But the bank balance of it will never diminish, right? Guru Nanak took 20 rupees and fed some saints in Farrukhabad, Langar. He was given that 20 rupees to do business. He fed those saints there. Till today, Langar is going on. Guru Nanak is no more here, but Guru Nanak is there in spirit. So it's not about dollars and cents anymore. I don't want to go to the corporate world. I'm 55 years. I've got projects lined up for next 5 years. I don't know. My core skill set is, me and my wife is, we are going into areas where others are choosing not to go. I say choosing. I know there are a lot of barriers, but I say choosing because you are not making a choice. When you decide and if the energy is with you, all barriers do start getting removed, right? You're choosing not to go, and we have found a skill set. I'm not boasting, but we found a passion and some energy is making us go in that direction, and we are doing our best to document as much as we can very fastly, very, very fast. Whether this energy will remain till I'm 60 years, I don't know. But if it does, I have got 4 more projects to do. Will the people with deep pockets come and support us? I don't know. The problem of the creative world is that divine has created this problem that you as a creative person are starved for the dollars that make the engine move. And the most of the time, people who have the dollars may not have the creative spirit. And the idea out here is, how do you match the two? I'm not trying to blame anyone. The challenge of life is, how do you put the two inside a mix? And in my case, I'm a sole person with my wife. We are not an organization. We are just working as individuals. And the beauty of these works in these challenging areas is that you succeed as an individual. But there's a huge risk in it.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand what you're saying, because as a non-profit, even, like, money is a prime concern for the 1947 partition archive as well. Okay, so we have a follow-up from Shahzeb Danish, who says that not just Pakistan, but also Afghanistan, Iran, or any other place that Guru Nanak went. And I understand that you also mentioned something about Makkah. So
as I said, I think I've answered that question, that we have been able to map 100% of his journey. This is a 24 episode docu-series, 20 hours of content, right? The question is, do you want to go and see those places or leave them? If you don't want to leave them, wait for the documentary that starts from 14th of October. Give 45 minutes to 50 minutes every week, and you will travel to all those places.
Sure, yes. Okay, so another question from Jagdev Singh, who asks, did you come across any tangible object relating to Guru Nanak Sahib in terms of text or any artifact?
The biggest tangible aspect is the humans who are carrying forward an energy. And that's all that matters. All that matters. If you have to try and understand Guru Nanak, it's his writings that have to be unraveled. Allegory. This is not about Guru Nanak's travels. I put a word before that, allegory. Allegory is a deeper metaphor, which is bigger than the smaller metaphors that we talk about. There's a deeper message inside a narrative. An allegory is basically unraveling the life of Guru Nanak and his message. Because today, I'm not a preacher. If I go to a Gurdwara and start standing and start preaching, which I'll never do, I know half the people will be sleeping like most of the times I'm sleeping, right? So the beauty out here is, how do I get the attention of Mr. Jagdev Singh or Parul or who was that person who just asked that question from the Muslim faith? How do I get his Shahzeb? How do I get his attention, irrespective of what country, what faith you are in? How do I get your attention? I will get your attention if I can show you an interesting journey that takes you through diverse geographies, diverse cultures, diversity of sites and places, and then through that, and sites and places are made by people, right? And then laden it with the verses of Guru Nanak to make you understand. Now, I'm going to stop here because Jagdev asked a question as tangible objects. I'll tell you some tangible objects. Do I believe in them? I mean, I don't want to go down the path, but I'll make where a narrative has been laden is associated with Guru Nanak in the form of gurdwaras. Most of the places today you find there'll be a well out there, and they'll say Guru Nanak ne well banaya siga pani da. You know, Guru Nanak was not drilling wells when he was traveling. His mission was oneness of mankind. He wanted to drill your soul, right? But we fixated him into these wells and objects because to run a structured faith system, you need structures around it, and people and followers who after him have built these tangibles and objects like wells all over. I question, how many wells did Guru Nanak dig? Tell me. I can count over 200. Do I really believe that he dug 200 wells? That's not what matters. What matters is what he gave us as the profound message in that place. And through the documentary, if we can unravel, dig that message, I think the purpose is solved.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the well we have to dig.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, Amardeep, and I really thank you for doing this amazing work. And I'm sure the future generations will also be very thankful to you for like doing, you and your wife and your entire team for doing what you've done. So I think that will be the last question that we can take because we don't have any more time on us. So thanks a lot, Amardeep, for sharing your wonderful research, your thoughts and insights, and like a lot of your ideas with us. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in.
Yeah. My pleasure. Can I just say one word? The Guru Nanak docu series, Allegory Tapestry of Guru Nanak's Travels. It releases on 14th of October. We have removed all barriers for seeing. You don't need to be a Netflix member. You don't need to be on Amazon Prime. You don't need to be on whatever OTT platform as a niche subscriber. The narrative belongs to you. It belongs to humanity. We've removed all. It costs a lot of money to do these narratives and to keep the engine running. It's like a langar has been made. We are hoping people will continue to support. I don't have a crystal ball, but we've removed all the barriers. We are making it available on the website called thegurunanak.com. Every week there'll be one episode. Go see it, go enjoy it. If you like it, learn something out of it. If you want to share it, learn something out of it and share it. If you want to support, and the journey will continue. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Amardeep. The 1947 Partition Archive is glad that people like you with such great knowledge, grace our Sunday Stories episode. And thank you everyone else for tuning in. And please do return next week for yet another, exciting conversation with Dr. Radha Kapuria, where she'll enlighten us about the impacts of partition on musical traditions. And if you love our oral history work and our mission, please consider making a donation of any size. We rely 100% on donations as an NGO. And in some countries, donations are tax-free. Links are in the description to this video. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Thank you, Parul.
Thanks a lot.